Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome back to the Woke Blokes podcast. Ryan Hassan from the Centre for Healing here, joined as always by Nick Sutherland from Myndfit. Nico, good to see you, my friend.
I've got Flat Hassan and Slick Nick in the house.
So, yeah, I'm a bit flat this morning. It's morning. I'm back in Thailand for a little bit, and it's just one of those mornings. You know, I can't. I was up a little bit late watching the British Open last night. It was one of those ones where like the time zone here isn't too bad. It starts at 12:30 in the afternoon. But then it's a long broadcast, and it was
because the Aussie players went out, and you're like, "What's and then Rory comes out, and then Tiger comes out, and then Speed. So it just kept going, and I was like, "I'll turn off now." And then next on the tee, Tiger Woods. You're like, "Fuck."
That's what I was doing. I'm like, I'm definitely turning it off after Rory finishes his 18.
Yeah, so it's just one of those mornings for you. Just
normally I've been getting up and going to the gym early and all that. And this morning I just hit snooze on the alarm and
have a you day.
A me day. Ooh, I like the sound of that. And Nick, you've been on some travels. That's what I want to talk about today. You've been up to the Curry, the Clon Curry up in where's that? The middle of bumfuck nowhere in Queensland, Australia.
Yeah, it's the edge of the world.
Right.
No fuel for 2,000 kilometres past this point.
Right.
No, it's not that bad. It's up near just an hour and a half from Mount Isa, so northwestish Queensland, central north.
So
Queensland.
For those, all of our overseas listeners, shout out to Finland. We got a bloody big country down here. We're about the size of the USA. But instead of having 300 million people, we've got what's our population now? 25, 30?
23 mil, I think.
23, right? So there's a lot of empty space. And so we live predominantly around the coastline, around the edge of our country. And so there are some really remote areas and a lot of, mining and things that go on there. And that's what you're up there for, right? Speaking to some miners about their mental health.
Yeah, so it happened really organically. Myndfit's got getting a bit of a foothold, a bit of a foothold in Mount Isa. We first went up there, so east, more to just near the Northern Territory border. There's a little town called Camberwell. It's not even a town, I don't think. It's just like a cattle station. Which is the size of a small European country, and it's the size of Finland. And so we went out there, and anyway, started working with a bloke who turned up to listen to us chat out there, and he's ended up in Boulia, which is the south of Mount Isa. And then another guy raised 100,000 for the Trade Mutt Foundation. And so Dan and Ed from Trade Mutt put him through one of our programs here. So shout out to Tonka in Mount Isa, a legend. He just won the North Queensland Volunteer of the Year. There's a lot of work, a lot of charity work.
Awesome, legend.
So a beautiful man. Anyway, so he knew someone out at this mine in Clon Curry. We went out there and worked with 20 of the management team and all around psychological safety. So we ran, Shano and I went up, stayed at the village where the fly in, fly out crews stay. It was just like going to an old army barracks for me, so it was pretty familiar, but Shano was a bit eyed wide, and he's like, what's going on out here? He didn't even know that road trains existed.
Right, okay.
So for once again, for those not familiar with Australia, there's trucks or lorries wherever you are, and they got like four trailers on them carrying road trains. So anyway, we did a 3.5 hour workshop with a group of 10 of the management, and then saw all them one-on-one, and then another workshop with the other 10, and then saw all them one-on-one. And it was awesome. A lot of engineers up there, so a lot of IQ, and when there's when there's a high IQ, there's a tendency for a low EQ, and that's not judgmental or dismissive. It's just they're more analytical. They're more that style of thinking. So yeah, we went up there and talked about psychological safety and
what's that term? Can you unpack that term a little bit? That
yeah.
interests
So
me.
I'm going to. So we went up there with the philosophy. We based it off the philosophy that fear will see a threat and anxiety will perceive a threat. So we have a physical being and a psychological being, a mind and a body, and the body will see a threat and will send messages and signals to. So if you see a snake, it'll have an appropriate amount of fear. Well, actually, most people have an inappropriate or disproportionate amount of fear, but we'll do enough to get out of the way and keep the physical being safe. But then the psychological being, the psychological safety is compromised when it imagines a threat. And what's imagined is that sense of safety or security, or most commonly, it's the ego not getting what it wants, not being perfect, not being loved and liked. The imagination is like, I want to ask her out, but she's going to say no and thinking I'm an idiot. Like that's the imagination perceiving a threat. So then, my mind's prevented me from leaving my house. So my psychological safety was compromised to such an extent that I couldn't open a door. So that was really interesting. So we went up there and worked with all these very analytical thinkers and just real. They were expecting a PowerPoint presentation and right, well, management should do this, and we came in and went, all right, everyone close your eyes. We're going to do a half-hour meditation.
Where's the charts from the PowerPoint and the data? And I want to take notes.
A lady actually said, where's the data to where is the data? And I laughed and said, oh, you wonderful creature. We don't feel it instead of thinking it for a minute. Just sit there and feel it. There's the data right there. You've got all the data that you need. And she's like, does not compute. Yeah. So it was wonderful. It was wonderful and I had a moment, and it was my first time really witnessing an awakening.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah. Obviously had my experience and have helped people to various degrees, but in one of the workshops, I said this sentence, and so I did a one-on-one session with this client, one of the managers, the next day, and he walks in and sits down, and he's an older guy in his 60s, and he sits down. And I said, just gently, when you do this work, you pick up on what they're putting down emotionally or the vibe, and I just gently said, how are you? And that was enough for him to start welling up. And he said, I've been an iceberg for 61 years, and yesterday you cracked me. It cracked me wide open. And I was like, oh. And then he started crying. And I said, just keep doing whatever you're doing. That's wonderful. And when you're ready, I'd love to hear more about it. If you'd like to share what your experience was. And he said one sentence that just, I don't know what it did. It just pierced me, or it undid me, or it just found a way in. And I said, what was it? And he said, being right isn't more important than how people feel. And I said, oh, I can't even remember why I said that. And Shane, actually, the next day, I brought him in. I said to this guy, can I bring Shane in? Because we don't see this very often to the degree that it's occurring. He said, yeah, no worries. So Shane came in. Shane said, yeah, I heard you say that. And I can't even remember. I thought, why did Nick say that? I've heard you say it before, but never in a workshop. And I'm like, I don't know. It just came to me. It literally. So let's get a bit woo-woo. I reckon it came through just for him.
For him, yeah.
Yeah, and because it wasn't really in context. I think it was said in a meditation, actually.
Yep.
So anyway, so he's been married for 10 years or so, and he said his wife keeps saying to him, you're always right. You don't care about how I feel. And he's like, well, I am right because the data says, and so literally he has been correct, but it's come at a cost of him running over other people. He hasn't factored emotion
Of course.
into the equation.
Yeah.
And he said, he's done these kind of workshops all over the world, at all the mines that he's worked in, decades and decades of it. And he said he's never sat there and been so engaged and actually written notes. He said, I expected to turn up, switch off for 3.5 hours, switch back on and go home.
And be right.
Yeah. And he said, I was writing notes and I took my notes home and said to my wife, just read these. And she's like, stimulus, spaced response. I don't know what that is. And needs, don't know what that is. And he goes, keep going, keep going. And then he'd written that sentence and she goes, what the fuck is this? What the fuck is that? This is him explaining it. And she's like, what is this? And he goes, I know. And I it did something, and now I don't know who I am.
Yeah.
And she's like, right. And he said, I'm sorry. And he'd never cried, never had emotions, never had access to that. And he said, I in the session, he's like, I don't know what to do now, but I'd love to. I'm thinking I need to do a 12-month program. And I think I need to obviously learn more about this and start evolving, because he's got an 8-year-old daughter as well. So and he's like, I don't want to be dismissive. I don't want to always be right anymore.
Yeah. So it's like, how am I going to relate differently to the people around me? And that's a process that he's going to have to learn. Yeah. And that really is an awakening. It's the falling away of a big part of our identity, to say like, well, if that's not who I am, who or what am I? It's so beautiful. It's like this. I read it in a book a while ago, similar lines kind of thing. It's like at some point in our life, we have to give up being right to those that are trying to love us. And at that sentence, those that they're trying to love us, and deep down, we're trying to love them back. But being right is more important for some reason. And wow, like the change that I think, I mean, obviously with him and his wife, that's fantastic. But having an 8-year-old daughter, man, that's so important now to give up that whole being right thing, because that's it. Kids just want to love their parents. They don't need to be, told they're wrong all the time. And that's, you're doing this wrong. You should be doing it that way. Well, no, you're wrong when you say that and all that. And what you do, you beat the fun out of the child and end up becoming who this guy become, who has to have an awakening at whatever age he was at a workshop that you ran. So yeah, that's unbelievable. And that could be scary for a lot of people. People can get a little bit scared, like, who am I? What if I'm not the behaviors that I've done before, if I'm not the ideas that I have about myself, if I'm not even so much what happened to me, then who or what am I? And then that's a journey that someone has to go on, and now people can get in trouble there. This is one thing that kind of we teach as well. It's like, that's when people can become vulnerable to like a religion or a dogma, or this set of beliefs that says, hey, we have the answer. It's like, no, let's help you work out what the answer is for you. Like, okay, now that you don't want to live this way, what values do you want to live by? What beliefs do you want to live by? How do you want to show up for your family? And don't outsource that to somebody else or some dogma.
Well, and that's going to link in beautifully to what else I wanted to chat about, because they go searching and seeking for a path. And the cult leaders and all of that are unfortunately very good at luring in these very vulnerable people. So
it's certainty that does it. It's certainty.
Yeah, well, it's confidence. And we had a funny moment. So then we spent a week driving home from our property up north. And we stayed at some really interesting Airbnbs along the way, and little places and quirky little funny people everywhere. And and then we went into a pub in Malakuta and just to check the menu to decide if we were going to go there for dinner. And I saw a seafood platter, and it's like fresh crayfish just off the beach and oysters up the road and everything. So I thought, good place to have a seafood platter.
Oh yeah.
And I said to the bloke, how big's a seafood platter? And he goes, oh, mate, it feeds 3 easy. Feeds 3, no worries at all. I'm like, because the seafood plater's here and you can add the crayfish for $40, add a whole crayfish. I'm wondering, will we need it? And then he's like, oh, mate, it feeds 3, no worries. And then this head pops out of the kitchen door, this lady, the chef, and she's like, it feeds 1. And and he goes, oh, I thought, she goes, it feeds 1. And he's like, right, well, it feeds 1. So he had no idea. He didn't want to say, I don't know. This was his ego taking over. I want to be seen to be perfect and all he loved and liked. So he just made up some bullshit with confidence and just ran with it. And thankfully the chef stuck her head out and actually gave us some
correct information.
And we're driving somewhere after that, and Em said something very similar. She said it, and I said, you don't know the answer. You don't know what you're talking about, do you? And we both started pissing ourselves laughing. And she goes, confidence is key. And I was like, sometimes, but not really. Not in instance with that bartender earlier, because it would have put it. And, okay, Nick, you're right. And then it brought back, well, I don't want to be right, but I also, I don't want to dismiss your feelings, honey. I don't, because I'm right. But yeah, it's just a very funny day with lots of interesting stimulus happening.
Yeah, I think we've all got that part. It comes back to we've all got these traits. I think we've all got a part of us that wants to be right. We've all got a part of us that wants to be certain. And it's like, I used to identify as someone who knew a lot about a lot, and so I might be that bartender in that instance and try and be confident. Now it's like understanding that I know a lot about a little. And I don't know much about a lot, and it's like and I love the term that white belt mentality. So it's like, if people are talking about something that I'm not into, it happened the other day. I met a British fellow who's been living here for 7 years, and he goes to different bars and like gets them into a better, like he takes them when they're going pretty shitty, makes them so they're running well, and so the owner can sell it, and then he kind of goes to the next bar, and he's got this cocktail bar at the minute. And I went down there to watch the footy. I don't know why, because the Kangaroos keep getting smashed every week. So I don't know why.
You get a new coach this week, so you're right.
Yeah, and so he started putting on the rugby union, and Australia were playing England, and because I told him I was into my sport, but I'm not into union, and there's some other guys there, and I just had that moment where I'm like, back in the past, I would have pretended like I knew what I was talking about here. But I was like sitting there asking him questions every 2 seconds. I'm like, so what's going on here? And so what's happened there? And so why they get the penalty and blah, blah, blah. And I think it's important to have that white belt mentality and realize when we don't know, certain areas, you talk to us about mental health and on that kind of thing, and we can be very, very confident in what we're talking about. But talk to me about video games, and I'm going to be a white belt. I'm going to be the one asking the questions, not telling people the answers.
So in that, we've got the 3 megos: must get what I want, must be perfect, must be loved and liked. The antithesis of those is that we are all ignorant, we are all incompetent, and we are all mediocre to some degree. And listening to a Ram Dust podcast this morning, and it's funny. It's like he's been to Myndfit or something. It's real weird. It's because he keeps talking about all the stuff we talk about here. So, but he was talking about the very thing. It's that I don't know, and we encourage people. It's an act of bravery. It's an act of courage. It's an act of strength to say I don't know, because you're surrendering the ego. And the Myndfit motto is discomfort precedes success. It's uncomfortable to say I don't know. It's uncomfortable for the ego to go, if I say I don't know about this sport, that means I'm not a man, or I'm not masculine enough, or these blokes are going to laugh. I'm going to be drinking beer, and that's a penalty. Yeah, I know it all. it's really difficult to say, oh, why did that happen? I'm ignorant. What's going on with that?
Yeah,
But
yeah.
we need to. If we fake it till we make it, if we bluff our way through, I don't agree with that. I don't like that approach.
No, but we don't really learn anything, do we?
No, that's what I mean. That's why I don't like it.
Yeah, yeah. So that you can just meditate on that. I don't know. You could do that with an emotion. Like sometimes I'll inquire into, let's say, sadness. I'm like, okay, let's see where this is coming from. And if I don't get an answer, then it's like I'm just going to meditate on, I'm sad and I don't know why. And like you said, that the ego starts screaming. There's got to be a source. There has to be a source, cause and effect. Who or what is it? And then you have to just keep coming back to, I don't know.
But that's when people we call it getting stuck in the why. Why? Why did that happen? Why? And it's an insatiable, this part of the ego. It's just, I want to know why. And so you don't have to understand why. You can just understand that it happened. Huh? Say that again. You don't have to understand why it happened. You can just understand that it happened. Oh, are you sure? I'm like, yeah, that's available to you. That's I'm going to give you permission to do that.
It's the mind, the mind's insatiable appetite to understand everything. It's like the more information that I know, then the more I'm able to survive. Whereas I think the heart, if you want to kind of separate two, the heart's not too fussed about the why. It's like you take one of those analytical people and you can put them in do a session or take them through a meditation or whatever, and they'll have this like complete amazing experience, like an out of body thing they've never had. And then as soon as they come back, you can see the mind come back online and try and codify it and try and understand it. And so I think I released this particular neurotransmitter in the brain, and then this came into my body. It's like, how about you just had the experience? It's like, oh yeah, that.
Oh, I'm not
it
sure
just
if
happened.
I can do that.
Yeah, but
it's funny when a client, we ask a lot of questions in here because I don't just want to give away all the answers. I want to lead people into an understanding and guide them into it. And so I'm always looking for that point where they say, I don't know, because that's the gap in their knowledge. And at Myndfit, we're working at the intersection of freedom and knowledge. Freedom, healing, knowledge, we use the Dharma or the Buddhist philosophy. But when they say, I don't know, my response is always, what a wonderful answer. And their response to that is, oh, because it's so different from when they said, I don't know in the past. Oh, geez, you're an idiot. Oh, God, you say, what do you mean you don't know? How dumb are you? What the fuck do you, that was always met with an unhealthy degree of criticism where now they're encountering, oh, what a wonderful answer. And oh, are you sure? And we did a really cool, I didn't do it in the workshops, I did in the one-on-one sessions, and I kept saying to this exercise, like, where are we right now? And to all these analytical thinkers, well, we're in a room. Okay, where's the room? At Ernest Henry Mine. Where's Ernest Henry Mine? Near Cloncurry. Where's Cloncurry? In North Queensland, where's North Queensland? In Queensland, where's Queensland? In Australia, where's Australia? In the Southern Hemisphere, or in Oceania, where's Oceania? Southern Hemisphere, and so on and so on. And where's Earth? In the galaxy, where's the galaxy? In the solar system, where's the solar system? In the universe, where's the universe? Well, it's this thing where the thing goes and it's a better, and I'm like, you're allowed to say I don't know. Yeah. And the more analytical is, the more answers there'll be. So I list them, and usually there's 9 responses.
Okay.
Until someone says, I don't know, but it's just a beautiful, such a simple little exercise to show how we must be right and how we must have all these. Where's the universe? No, I don't know. Brian Cox doesn't know.
Yeah. And he'll tell you he doesn't know. And he's one of the smartest people on the planet.
Yes. But he's smart enough to say, I don't know. He's smart enough to recognize this is where there's a combination. This is where IQ and EQ meet. And the EQ is there's been a massive bent, a massive bias on IQ, and the whole school system's been based around IQ and IQ and IQ. And now, thankfully, there's a shift in an understanding that without a healthy amount of EQ underpinning that IQ falls down. So this is what we're finding up at the mine. So it's Brian Cox is a beautiful example of the IQ being underpinned by a wonderful EQ, and the EQ comes from a surrendering of the ego. He's such a smart person and could sit there and I know this and I know that, but he's so affable in the way that he presents and he engages and he says, I don't know all of this, but let's go and grab a telescope and find out.
Yeah, well, it's like I'm experiencing that with Tommy at the minute, having a 3-year-old, and like everything is why, Dad? Why this? Why does this happen? Why does that happen? And I know I do my best. I'm like, because I really want him to understand the world and how it works. But then, like many times a day, I'm like, I don't know why that happens. We could try and find out, but so it's really interesting. I heard
Let's
this
just
story.
sit and observe. Let's sit and observe it for a while, Tommy, and we'll learn why it happens.
I'm hoping it'll come back to me as we talk, but he had a fucking ripper for me yesterday. Like, I hope it comes back to me. He had a ripper. I heard this other story yesterday as well, though. It's kind of this searching for certainty and knowing the truth. It was actually our good friend Matthew McNutt, who's been on the show. He was telling me, and he was saying that he went to a Buddhist monastery or whatever you would call it when he was like 18, young kid, and he went with his brother and he heard this monk speaking about, Buddhist principles. And now Matt had been brought up very Christian ideals and everything. And then they were able to ask questions to the monk and he's like, well, what is truth? Like, is this these Christian beliefs over here that I've been brought up on since I was born? Is that truth? Is what you're telling me here? Is that truth? And the monk grabbed him and Matt's brother who came with him and goes, come with me. And he brought him out into a hallway and there was kind of a canvas on the wall. And he said maybe, 2 meters by 1 meter, there's this big canvas, and he brought a torch with him and he turned all the lights off. So it was black. And he would flick the torch on and hold it really close. So it would only illuminate a tiny little corner of the canvas and goes, here's Buddhism. And he'd turn it off and he'd go, here's Christianity. And he'd turn it off and he'd go, here's science. And he'd turn it off and he goes, here's psychology, turn off, here's Hinduism. And he'd go through all of these things. And he goes, all of these different beliefs and ideals, they'll find little pieces of truth, but inherently being a human being means we're never going to understand the whole truth of reality and the totality of it all. And I think that really, it's such a beautiful teaching to me because it's like, hey, we're human. We're not going to know everything about why we're here, what we are. One of the great quotes that I love is all religion exists because we don't know what we are. It's like we're trying to find certainty. We're trying to know something that inherently we're not meant to know, I don't think.
Clients come in here, and that is a beautiful description and story. And clients come in here, and obviously, I'm going to see a psychotherapist. I'm going to get some counselling, whatever. And they come in and we unpack some stuff and then, so what should I do? And I'm like, I think you should give up. And they're like, what do you mean? I said, I'd just give up. I'd give up. Well, you can't say that. You can't. You're a mental health professional. You can't tell a person to give up. That's terrible. That's terrible advice. And I'm like, only if you're going to interpret it as such. How are you interpreting what I'm saying? They're like, just give up, stop trying. I'm like, yeah, well, what are you going to stop trying? And that's as far as they've gone.
Mm-hmm.
They're like, really, what are you going to stop trying? I don't know. Well, what are you trying? I'm trying to make my kids do what I want. I'm trying to make my wife say certain things. I'm trying to make more money. I'm trying to make the world around me different to how it is. I'm trying. And how's that working for you? Well, I'm sitting in your office. Yeah, okay. So wouldn't giving up be worth entertaining and exploring? And yeah, right. Give up your attachments, give up your desires, give up thinking you're right. Give it all up. Surrender and see what happens. Yeah, but how? All right, well, I've got some work to do.
Yeah, the big one that comes up with that with people, I do the same thing. And it's like, I love to say, what about giving up worrying about what other people think of you? Oh, that'd be great. Same thing though. How do I do that? And that's a process because it's like an identity's been formed that really cares what other people think, and those opinions matter. And more often not, those opinions matter more than the person's opinion of themselves. And they're living in a state of fear, in a state of that fear of the psychological self.
The psychological safety has been compromised.
Yeah. Can I tell you a story? Just because you
Is it a man
spoke
named
about
Brady,
that.
or
What's that?
is it about a man named Brady?
It's about a man named Ryan.
Here's
A lot of
a
my stories are about
story.
myself, aren't they?
Here's a story of a man named Brady. Yeah, sorry, go.
Because you started off by talking about this, the actual fear response, of the body in response to threat, and then the psychological self creating perceived threat, right?
Yeah.
And it's a topic I love talking about as well. But I had a really clear instance of it just before we came back to Thailand. And so me and Tommy would go on these bushwalks all the time, like multiple times a week, because he's obsessed with insects and bugs, all of that kind of thing at the minute. So we'd find little spots near where we lived, any rocks or logs, we'd lift them up. Like, oh, look, there's, sladers, or there's a millipede, or every now and then we'd find like a little scorpion, and that was really exciting. And so we were at one, and there was this big log, and there was long grass, and I sort of used my boot, and I kicked it up, and there was a snake underneath the log. It wasn't a big one; it was a relatively small snake. And then I had just a response in the moment to that snake, and it actually, there wasn't really much fear present, to be honest.
Mm-hmm.
I just sort of went, okay,
shocked.
No, I saw it. I'm like, it was just my leg was there. It seemed threatening. I'm like, I just made sure, Tommy, come here, mate. I'll pick him up. So he's okay. I'm like, I put it back down. I'm like, do you see there's a snake there, mate? How cool is that? Blah, blah, blah. Then I put it back down. We walked away. There was no problem. There was very little amount of fear. Do you know what happened straight after that? We were walking back to the car along the path, and he's like, Daddy, I want to look in here. And there was a part where there's long grass. And all of a sudden I'm like, no, we won't, don't go in there, mate. There's long grass. There might be snakes. Right. So like, what I've done, my psychological self has ruined the rest of the walk, basically. Right. Because it's now created more fear and more worry and more anxiety, way more than when the actual threat happened.
Well, your fear saw a threat, but then your anxiety imagined all these snakes, and so that was. And I had a beautiful example of that with a snake. We used a snake as well. A client who's a farmer in New South Wales, and it was a session on Monday, and it was a year to the day since he'd separated from his ex-partner, and he's going to sign the divorce papers next week. So he's going to see her in person for the first time in a long time. I said, how are you feeling? He's like, yeah, pretty anxious. He started explaining why, and then I just sort of intervened, and I was like, how do you feel about snakes? And he's like, yeah, good. If they're near the house, I'll probably kill them if they're dangerous because of the dogs. But if they're out in the paddock or whatever, I'll actually get a bit curious and follow them around, and I like to watch them. Find it pretty interesting. And I was like, you're more afraid of seeing your ex-wife in a future that doesn't exist yet than a creature that could kill you. And he just is like, oh, fuck.
The power of the mind.
I said, it's hilarious. It's like going to the distortions. He's going to the worst case scenario and blowing things out of proportion and everything. And that's where he's not taking care of his psychological safety, of his psychological being. He's not jumping in the driver's seat and directing the narrative and keeping things in perspective and in proportion. So the first element in Myndfit is that you are responsible for your happiness and health. So he's not being responsible for his happiness in that moment. He's giving the key to his happiness to an imagined woman in an imagined time and in an imagined future. It's not here. It's not. And so when clients start doing the work on that, I've told a story about one who went for a job interview and she felt all the old stuff, and she said nothing in there is trying to kill me. And I said, no, to this guy, you can't be harmed. This is where we need to be brave, be courageous, go into there in our hearts instead of our egos, and see the ex and go, hey, how are you? You know, and I hope you're doing well. Make it about her, because as soon as the ego gets involved, sure as shit, you're going to make it about you, and you're going to imagine this threat, and you're going to feel threatened, and you're going to tighten up and contract, and then
Defensive.
and that's where anxiety creates a controlling nature, and you'll be like, oh, hi, and you'll put out this terrible vibe, and you'll walk away going, oh, well, that was fucked. That was a horrible experience. And I'll be like, congratulations on creating that for yourself.
Yeah.
So
what a manifester.
Yeah. So once again, it's that, just if you're listening, you know, people have, what we're doing is teaching people to have an emotional response that's in proportion to what they're experiencing. So the one with you and Tommy, it was an appropriate response for you to just be mindful of the danger, but then it was disproportionate when you were walking back. And that's our nature. That's our work to do on ourselves.
Yeah, and we just we watch it. You know, we watch it, then we can actually make some different choices. And the divorce one's a great one.
When you were saying before about the, you know, with the identity and who are we now, and it's even transcend that into what are we, and remember that we're not our thoughts, we're not our feelings, we're just the awareness of everything that exists. So that watch it, just watch yourself, watch your nature, observe. You are the biggest source of stimulus. So observe yourself and how you are reacting or responding, and then when you're reacting disproportionately, that's when you can intervene and take care of your business.
Yeah, because there's like willful thoughts and automatic thoughts. Because it's like, I can right now, if you're listening to this, and this is another Michael Singer thing that he talks about, it's like, you know, in your head, just say hello and say it again. Say it 5 times in a row. And so you can do that. So that's like a willful thought. And then you got automatic thoughts, and most thoughts are automatic, right? Mm-hmm. But if you have a level of awareness and you're able to be that witness that you were talking about and watching it, you can see when automatic thoughts come in. You can not judge them, because when I saw Tommy go off into the long grass and that thought came up, I'm like, oh, wow. That came up real fast. I'm about to ruin this walk with him, right? And then we can then bring in the willful thoughts. Then we have choice in that moment to say, hey, no, that's just you've stored a little impression of what happened 5 minutes ago. What's the appropriate reaction to the level of threat that's happening right now? Because, you know, we'd had 50 bushwalks before that, never ever seen a snake or anything like that. That snake was small and probably wasn't even dangerous. Now all of a sudden the mind, because it's based on survival, those older parts of the brain back here, all of a sudden imagines there's snakes everywhere. they're everywhere around here.
Danger.
Yeah, and not only that, like the snake, like when it sees a human, it normally just slithers away. Now they're like, want to attack us. You know, it's like, this is what the mind does. And I love the divorce example as well, because so many people, they get a physical divorce, but it's like, you're not really divorced up here, because it's like, oh, hey, think I was having a party on Saturday night. Is Dave going to be there, my ex? And it's like, you're still ruining your life. That's not too harsh of a term, I don't think. Ruining your life based on these impressions.
A life lived in fear isn't a life well lived. So most people are living their life. You know what I'm talking about?
And that's the battle. Isn't that the main battle? Like,
it's not a battle. It's the work to do. It's instead of battling it and creating more conflict, we actually want to surrender to that nature and work with it instead of against it. And we can only do that through deepening our understanding of ourselves and our nature. And understanding is the cornerstone to love. So when we can love ourselves, we can take care of ourselves, we can treat ourselves a bit kinder, we can look after ourselves, we're in a position where we're okay, then we can help those around us, we can walk each other home, and we can go and sign the paperwork with compassion and empathy. And I really honestly wish you a wonderful, happy life, because I'm okay. I have happiness within me, so I can give that happiness away to you. But I can't do that if I'm not doing the work. And what you said before about that emotional divorce was M separated from her ex-husband years ago, but still hasn't gotten a divorce. Just haven't gotten around to it. When I went through my divorce, I got it, signed the paperwork, and emotionally and physically divorced quite early because I was mindful of it. I knew that I wanted to move on energetically and everything. So it doesn't pop up in my mind on any level. Now, different circumstances because Em's got kids involved and whatever, but she was sharing her story to someone, and they said because of the mention of divorce popped up, and I said, I'm not divorced, but we're separated. And this person said, in the eyes of the universe, you are still married because you've still got that energy connection. You've still got that energetic connection. So you may not still be physically in the same space, but energetically, you haven't unsigned that contract, that commitment. And she's like, yeah, right, wow. So it was a
well, that's interesting. Yeah, I never held really any weight with like a marriage contract. So I had that. After I split up with my ex, we didn't get divorced for a couple of years. Until Melissa was like, "Are you gonna divorce your ex or not?" And then, but like it kind of, for me, it didn't feel, and I think different people have different associations to these constructs, I suppose. But I didn't have that. They're like, so I just sort of reached out and went, "Oh, hey, we haven't actually got divorced. Should we just do that?" Yep, no worries. I'm very fortunate in that there was no conflict or, and there wasn't kids or anything like that.
But if you go metaphysically, so emotionally and psychologically, you didn't feel anything, but metaphysically, you go beyond that. There was still a binding there, and there was still an agreement was made, and that wasn't. I don't know. I'd say,
but our agreement, I just don't tie to our marriage contract at all. It's just a different way of viewing it. I think but I still feel energetically tied to I feel energetically tied to pretty much everyone I've come into contact with on this earth. I've told this story before on the podcast, I'm sure, but I'll tell it again. But
here we go, people. Let's strap yourself.
No. It's just
no, it's good. I'm waiting. I'm just going to settle in.
I love it. It's. I was at a friend's house and he owned a farm out Druin Way, and he was quite connected to the land, and he'd made a lot of friends with the Aboriginal community and the elders of that area. Because he wanted to look after the land and honor the custodians of the land and everything. And I went around to his house one day. I can't remember what we were doing. And but I was there for some sort of little ceremony we were doing, and this our Aboriginal elder was there, and I was sitting next to him on the couch, and he just had this energy, this like aura. And I'd first met him, and I was just sort of looking at him, and I was just sort of having a little chat, and he said, brother, we do our dot paintings in our culture, and we paint them. We do the little dots, and they're beautiful. And he goes, but we're all creating a piece of art with our life. Our life is a dot painting, and every person that we meet and that we come in contact with in this life is a dot on our painting. And now I'm sitting here with you, brother. You're a dot on my painting, and I am on yours. And I'm just like, oh my God, this is amazing. And so ever since then, that's kind of how I viewed it. Like
so
everyone.
He left an imprint on you, and your snake story with Tommy before, you did a great job of not leaving an imprint on Tommy that would have then created a phobia or a deep fear within him. So you're right. We are all coming into contact with each other. We do. Hopefully you're in Thailand. Hopefully you meet the bloke that walked up to me and said, "Leave a mark, not a stain." Yeah. And then just randomly walked off. Remember, I think I've spoken about him. And once again, great segue because
that's such a good line. Sorry.
Yeah, but it was, dude, I've told you the story. He literally had to cross the road to come in front of me and stood before me and said, "Leave a mark, not a stain," and then kept walking.
It's amazing.
It's mind blowing. Before you were talking about Matty McNutt's experience with the torch and the truth and everything, and We listened to this wonderful book on the way home on Audible called The Dreaming Path
Yep.
by Paul Callaghan. And it's Indigenous thinking to change your life. And what I really took out of it and what I've been chatting with clients about is Western culture. So I'll preface this by I had a client finish a 12-month program on Monday, and he's going through a divorce, and he got married 5 years ago. And he said the most wonderful thing. He said, I started ticking all these boxes. I had the job and the wife and the house and the car, and and the more boxes I ticked, the unhappier I got. And I was like, oh, I guess now I'm unticking the boxes, and I'm suddenly finding myself a bit freer, a bit lighter, a bit happier. Like, because there was all this, there was an immaturity, and he's very much a people pleaser. So he's making decisions out of fear, ticking these boxes out of fear. And we had this beautiful conversation about the Western society is about ticking those boxes, and it's quite a shallow, surface level culture, and it's about do more, be more, have more, get more. It's just not enoughness culture. And you look at Eastern cultures, and in Asia, especially, and they're much deeper culture, and they have practices and daily practices and a different way of living. And listening to this book, the Dreaming Path, all of my clients, and I know it's a big statement, but I'm sticking with it. All of my clients don't have a path. They're all living aimlessly. And they're all heroes because they're all turning up every single day, and they're all doing the very best they can with what they have, but they are lacking direction. They're lacking guidance. They're lacking a path to follow. And they'll try this or they'll try that, and they'll stick this band-aid on or dabble in that. And I did a meditation, and they try all these little things, but until they stick and commit to something. Now, path could be martial arts. It's a discipline. It could be religion, Buddhism. It could be just an Eastern culture, But so it was a beautiful book. We had Catherine Ingram came into HQ. She's moved to Mornington now, and she's going to live in Mornington. She popped in for a cuppa, and I finally got to meet her in person and had a wonderful time. And I was talking to her about the book, and I said, "It's funny. I heard a lot of," and I said, "I want to call it Buddhism and Stoicism, but it's not. It's just wisdom. I just heard this ancient wisdom coming through because the Aboriginals are talking about it, the Buddhists are talking about it, the Stoics are talking about it, the Maoris, the Native Americans, they're all talking about this ancient wisdom, and that's the path that we can start to really come in contact with. And when a person is in alignment, when a person is on a path, they are solid. They are in their skin. They are here and now. They are just unrattled. They are at ease. And I'm really going to shine more of a spotlight on, I consider myself to be a guide. When someone says, "What do you do?" I'm like, "I don't know. I guide people." And by that very nature, it suggests that Myndfit is a pathway. So we're really trying to shine more of a light on this pathway here.
Yeah, I love that. It's made me think when we were starting the center and we were kind of putting it out there, like, hey, this is the new generation and the new blah 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 and all this. And then I read a book on the history of Aboriginal healing from thousands of years ago. I'm like, oh, they were doing what we do. And then different traditions, the same. You're right.
Call the sign writer. It's not new generation.
Yeah, no, it's ancient. And so, I was listening to a guy recently, and if we think about this on a real collective level, and it ties into these, how when someone's in alignment, they know who they are, they have a set of values, they're moving in a direction, they're enjoying life along the way. And this guy was talking about, back when Darwin found the theory of evolution, and realized that, hey, guess what? This big man in the sky didn't make this 6,000 years ago. This is, and then Nietzsche famously said, God is dead and his blood will be on his hands for centuries to come. And it was very true when it came to that. So now it's like, this theory of evolution showed that a lot of religion is just a set of beliefs that people lived by. And now we've been spending however many years trying to work out what set of beliefs we should live by, now that we know that those ones aren't exactly correct. Even though there's some wonderful truths in everything, they're not correct. So it's all fallen apart. And so now our Western culture, exactly like you said with the box ticking, because I was the same. It's like, go get your education, play some sport, get a job, earn money, get married, get a house, have kids. And that's why I was ticking the boxes as well and going, this can't be it. Like, is this? I remember my dad said to me once, I'm like, Dad, why do we get married? Like, is that kind of weird? He goes, it's just what you do. And I'm like, and I go, okay. And then looking back now, I'm like, what a shit answer.
I'm glad you're not applying that approach with Tommy.
Tommy's definitely not having that approach.
Brian Cox had listened to this story from him, and he, because you just said this can't be it, and he said he laughs when he hears people say, "Is this it? Is this all there is?" Because he's like, the universe is 13.5 billion years old. Planet Earth's about 5 billion years old. And then we're, however million years old, and we're just made of stardust, basically. So we're these constructs, and one day we won't exist, in here, but also as a species. So in the grand scheme of things, we're in this tiniest sliver of little windows where we, in this construct, get to feel and see and think and hear and experience all that is in existence. Well, not all, just because we can only see so much in the frequencies that we have, but we get to experience and see and feel things. How the fuck is that not enough? Like, how? It's a miracle that the ego and the label and identity of Nick Sutherland exists in this microcosm of time, where I can stand on a planet and see another planet.
Yeah, it's like compare it to being anywhere else in the universe, where there's just nothing.
Time.
Yeah. Or even like, we're trying to, we send rovers to Mars and try and go to Mars. It's just red dust. That's all it is. There's nothing else there.
There must be more. It's not enough.
There must be signs that at one point there may have been water here. It's like, well, we've got heaps of water. I've got a pool right here. I've got the ocean right there. Like, I could come back to the term. It's like I like the term just this. Like, what is reality? It's just this. It's just, there's not, and I like the term just this, because it doesn't have to be grand. It doesn't have to be peak moments or whatever it is. It's just whatever's right in front of us. And whatever's right in front of us was here way before us, like you said, and it's going to be here way after us. Mm-hmm. But we get to look at it for a little bit.
So that's what I talk to clients about. Be here now.
So be it. It just is. Do the work. Myndfit 4 commandments.
That's as simple as I can. That's as basic as I can reduce everything down to. Just be here now. Oh, this happened. Well, so be it. Oh, what does that mean? It just is, and do the work.
Yeah,
that's the path. If you're looking for a path, just try and follow that one for a bit and see what happens.
Beautiful, Nico. That was wonderful. You got anything else you want to share?
Oh, I love you.
Oh God, I feel that. I'm receiving that fully.
Good. And that's not I love you. I am in a state of love, and I am existing in that state of love with you.
Love is a verb.
Mm-hmm. Love is a battlefield. Bit of Pat Benatar, I think there.
Yeah,
Well, yeah, we haven't done one for a while. We've had a bit of a break. You've been over there and doing your thing, and I've been off doing my thing. So it's wonderful. It feels wonderful to reconnect on a weekend where there's golf to be played and talked about. And
Absolutely. We'll be texting back and forward during the Open.
mm,
Rory started off well again.
who's
Oh,
winning? Who's winning for you? Who's
well, I'm obviously, I want Cam Smith up there again. So I obviously
yeah.
want him to get the job done. I'd like Rory. Who's going to win? I don't know. Let's talk about it after round 2. I always need to make a decision after round 2.
Well, you already provided the correct answer. I don't know because
Yeah.
we don't know. So well done. You're so
Yeah.
clever.
Is that an option if I go to Sportsbet to put a bet on the winner? I don't know. What are the odds if I don't know?
You get 0.00 odds on that.
That'd be so good. I don't know.
I surrender. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen.
So some homework for clients, for listeners out there, is to play around with surrendering, play around with I don't know, and sit in the uncomfortableness of it, and stop trying. And it sounds foreign. It's turning left instead of right. It sounds silly, but give it a crack and stop trying to forcing. So when we went to the mine, it was a beautiful week and we appreciate it. And I said to them, if this is all that comes of this, we're in gratitude. Thank you so much. There was so much potential that we could do up there, and we haven't heard anything back. We presented something to him, so this is what's available, and nothing. We haven't heard anything back at this point. It's only been a week and a bit, but even in that, it's like even if so, I had some space from work, and we talk about spaciousness, and we go away by ourselves and whatever, and it's so important. And having that space away from work, I'm really coming down to this. Even if the mind comes back and says, "Can you do all of this stuff for us?" I'm feeling I'm going to set a boundary and say no, actually, because in that spaciousness, I got to identify that my path, my alignment, where I'm needed is here at HQ, and building the community here and going internal in here instead of external out there. So yeah, it was a really interesting learning to come into that, and you can't come into those decisions or those understandings or those moments of clarity without that spaciousness. So I'm giving up my desires to go and do all the work out there and giving up thinking that I should go and do all that. And I said to Shane, it's like, I'm just taking my hands off the wheel. I'm taking my hands off the wheel. And it feels, it could feel terrifying to let go of trying to control it and steer it in a certain direction. But I know Myndfit is its own entity. As soon as I get involved and start interfering, it doesn't work. So I've got to keep coming back to I'm just a passenger in this. So
that's the best metaphor. I love the hands off the wheel, and so that's like another bit of homework. For everyone in Finland. Here's your homework. It's like whatever your next thing is, like your next interaction, like you might be going to work or going to a cafe to catch up with a friend, or you might have a little gathering on Friday night. Take your hands off the wheel, because when you say give up and trying, it's been drilled into us that you should never give up and you've always got to try. What we're saying is stop trying and give up any expectation of how this thing's going to go. Because that's what we do.
You desire for it to be a certain way, or your agenda of what it should be.
Exactly. It's I'm going to this thing and it has to go a certain way for me to be okay. What if I was okay no matter how it went? That's hands off the wheel.
We've got Dan in here as a practitioner now, and he's added a beautiful little tool to the toolbox, and he's got 3 types of business. You got yours, theirs, and the universe's business. And I've added to it and said, we've got to stop interfering in other people's business and interfering in the universe's business and being dissatisfied with everything out there, and start intervening in our own business. So If you're going to catch up with someone, go on a party, or got something on, or you're going to a job interview, give up your attachments of what it should be. Stop trying to interfere with what's meant to be, or other people's journeys or other people's paths, and just you do you. Focus on your business and take care of your business.
You do you.
Mm.
Taking care of business.
You do you, whilst being connected to everything. So attached to nothing, connected to everything. You don't want to just you do you. I'll do me and you do you. That's separateness. I'll take care of my business and I'll be there to support you and blah blah blah. So it's not as black and white as.
No, well, it's like I'll be there to support you, or I'll be there to set a boundary for you. It's all of that, you know. It's all of that. That's all of that. All right, Nico. Lovely chatting to you as always. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in and listening. We'll speak to you all next time.
Peace out.
Bye.